Alrighty then. Going to spend a little time talking about knife construction and what makes a good throwing knife. You know, if you're going to buy them with the intent of throwing them, collecting them, keep throwing them so they don't break. A throwing knife takes a tremendous amount of abuse. So I'm just going to talk a little bit about knife construction and what to look for, basic things to look for when you're going to buy knives like these. These aren't what you'd call knives that were made professional throwing knives. You know, these are hunting knives or whatever. This is a military knife issue. This is just a railroad spike. You can find these railroad spike knives, all kinds of configurations of these. For about 20 bucks, $25 at the time of this video. They're kind of interesting. You're not going to break them, I'll tell you that. So, knife construction. Basic things on terminology. I think the important thing is the knife tang. A tang, T-A-N-G, is the metal part that makes up the handle. This is a full tang. That is, it's kind of the same width as a knife blade. It's like a one piece. This is obviously full tang. It's all just one full piece kind of extending off the knife blade. This is obviously a full tang knife. Extending off the knife, you can see the whole handle is just a big metal piece. Picture of full tang versus partial tang that I drew. Full tang versus partial tang. And the thing with the tang, T-A-N-G, tang, a full tang knife is going to hold up a lot better and longer from the abuse of throwing, as to where a partial tang knife will break fairly quick. So you want to look for a knife with a full tang on it. Here's a picture. You can see what to look for on the handle. You can usually see the knife metal all the way around the handle. Here's a picture of that. So look for a full tang knife. Now, picture off. Here's an example of a partial tang, a very rare example of a partial tang knife that was very good for throwing. I know, I've been throwing this knife since I was a paratrooper and infantryman, and 2nd 504th Parachute Infantry Regiment, 1st Brigade, 82nd Airborne, my military alma mater. My supply sergeant at the time actually issued me this knife. And that's pretty good because that was an Army unit I was in, and this is an Air Force issue then at the time. I don't think they do anymore, I don't know. This is an Air Force pilot survival knife. It went in the survival kit in helicopters and other aircraft. And my supply sergeant got me a few of these actually, so I'm really good at throwing this knife. I've been throwing it for a long time. This and one's just like it. I think there's a third one. Now I'll tell you, this knife here was made in Camillus, New York. And Camillus Knife Factory is about, or was about, 35 miles from where I'm parked here in this motorcycle. And I actually went there in the 90s, a year or two before they sadly closed forever, went out of business, and talked to their production foreman about this knife because it was a personal favorite of mine. And I had the idea to write a book on knife throwing at the time. which I would some years later. And he told me about this knife. He's more than happy to talk to me about this knife. They've been making it since the Vietnam era, the 60s, and they tempered it. He told me that the tip is tempered very hard so it could punch through, a pilot could punch through the aluminum of a downed aircraft, you know, a helicopter or A-10 or some downed aircraft. He could punch through that and maybe help get him out. So this is very hard, and as you get back here to the partial tang, which is just a thin rod, nail-thick rod sticking through here, that these are leather rings that go around it, and they've shrunk up over the years. But they tempered this part soft so that it would bend before it breaks. And I can tell you that I don't know how many, probably thousands of times I've thrown this knife. Really good throwing knife. Ontario Knife Company makes these now. Ontario Knife Company makes the Air Force Pilot Survival Knife. I don't know if they temper them like Camillus did, where the handle tang was tempered with the rings going over it. I don't know. Hopefully. But this one actually held up over the years pretty well. And it's the only example of a partial tang knife that I can think of that will take the abuse of throwing repeatedly without breaking. Most of them they'll break off before they bend. So you want to look for a full tang in your throwing knife, all right? You're going to want to also look at the blade of, this is a good example. This is a railroad spike knife. You see the center here where it's thick? That's like a dagger. This is called the spine of the blade. The thick part is the spine of the blade. You're going to be looking for a knife with a thick spine going all the way to the tip. You can see this one, true to dagger form, it goes down the center like a spear point. Very thick spine. Now I'm going to break this knife, throwing it. A lot of knives like this Bowie, rather inexpensive Bowie, but a personal favorite. The spine is really up here, the top. That's the thick part of the knife. And this one's pretty darn thick. You can see where I've been hammering on this one to split wood. I use this knife for more than throwing. I do a lot of gardening with this knife, take it on campouts. It's just a good knife all the way around, and will in this video disclose where to get this. Very inexpensive. You're not going to break it. You're not. Alright. So you're going to want to look for a knife with a full tang. You're going to want to look for a knife with a thick spine, be it the spine up top here, or it could be a thick spine down the middle, as this one. And here's another thing to look for a knife. This is a Bowie knife. I mean, this costs about 20 bucks. And they call it a Bowie knife. That's a pretty generic term anymore, Bowie knife. But it is a Bowie knife, you can tell by the tip. This also is a Bowie knife. Large Bowie, both of them. This one sticks better than this one. I can throw this at a fairly hard target, be an oak tree, and sometimes it'll bounce off even though I hit point first. This one doesn't bounce off. So pointiness counts in knife throwing. And you can see the spine on this one is a little different than this. The way the spine rides all the way up to the tip. So it's something to look for. It gives the tip strength like a spear point. It's thick. So look at the spine, a thick spine that's going to support the tip of the knife so it doesn't snap off. Alright, some things to look for. Inexpensive. I don't know about you, but all my throwing knives cost anywhere between $7 and $25. I mean, I'm not going to throw an expensive knife. I've got expensive knives, kitchen knives namely, that I'm not going to throw because in the years past, I've been throwing 50 years. You can believe that I broke some throwing knives. Not throwing knives, some expensive knives. Throwing knives I wished I hadn't because they didn't have a full tang. I can think of a Fairbanks Sykes dagger World War II reproduction. and I broke that knife, and it was expensive. It was a work of art. It had a partial tang. Or the blade, it didn't have a thick spine, like a kitchen butcher knife really isn't made to take the abuse. It's fairly thin, snap off. Or it was a very, very, very hard, high carbon knife, like a lot of high-end kitchen cutlery are. Generally, you get your cheaper knives. This isn't made in, I don't know, I think it's made in Pakistan. It's a decent steel, but it's a fairly soft steel, even though it's a carbon steel, which means it has enough carbon, like this railroad spike, it will rust, left out. This knife will bend before it breaks. So, a cheaper knife generally isn't going to be a brittle knife. Like, you don't want to throw a knife with a ceramic blade. No way. It'll break. You can throw it once, then you can throw it in the garbage. Another knife you don't want to throw, and this is just pretty much common sense, but in case you don't know, I'll let you know so you don't ruin anything nice. Any folding knife. Any folding knife. Oh, can I throw this knife? Yeah, I could throw this knife. Maybe once or twice before I'm throwing it in the garbage. Any throwing knife, any folding knife, like this nice whittling knife. It's got a clip blade on here somewhere. There it is. Come on. I don't use the clip blade much on this. This is the one I carve with. So I use the sheep's foot edge blade. You know, yeah, I can throw this and stick it pretty good. I know better though, because I've broken some pretty darn good pocket knives till I finally got through my thick head. Stop throwing pocket knives unless you don't care if they break, because they will break. That goes for switchblades, bolo knives, any type of folding knife. You know, lock blades. Unless you want to throw that knife away, don't throw it, or unless it's an emergency. So don't throw these as a rule. I think that's it. I think that's all I can't think of anything. Knife construction. When I get into the lesson on making modifications to throwing knives, I'll talk more about knife construction when it comes to throwing knives. But when it comes to going out and buying knives that you want to throw, that's what to look for. Full tang and a thick spine. You know, be it like these two buoys that pretty much go up the top, or this spear, spike, fantasy knife, whatever you want to call it, made out of a railroad spike, where the spine goes right down the center. But this is really solid. I've got a couple of them. It's not going to break. It's a good thrower. All these knives are good throwers, honestly. The reason I like this one is because this is not just a good thrower, it's also a good gardening tool, utility knife. It's really heavy. And I'll tell you more about this knife when I do about knife construction. Finally, when it comes to knife construction, what makes a good knife, I want to talk about what's called professional throwing knives, which I don't have any of. Well, I have one. I have a small one. I don't have it on me. A friend got them for me. Set of 3. I have one left. I don't know where the others went. It had a full tang. It had some fantasy, it had like a serrated edge on it. Hold on a second, I'll get it. I'll get it. Alright, be right back. Smoke them if we got them. Alright, this was a professional throwing knife. It still is. Alright, the handle came off of it a long time ago and I just put some electric tape on it. Serrated edge, right. Here's another railroad spike knife with, you can see the spine going right down the center. It's a really good throwing knife. It will bend up though, you just bend it back. Professional throwing knives. they usually have everything you're looking for in a knife, a throwing knife, and they vary in prices greatly. I don't buy them because they just don't make them big enough for I like a large knife to throw. And there's a cool factor. I like to carry a Bowie knife. I throw a large Bowie knife. It's good for more than throwing. I can do more than just throw with it. So I personally don't buy the large throwing knives. I like to look around when I'm bored and see what type of $20 giant knife or a boot knife are nice too, with a full tang, a thick spine, and fairly pointy, fairly cheap, and just collect them and modify some of them. And I'll get into modifications in one of my next classes coming up. So, knife construction. Oh, I left out something. Sorry. Now, just a minute. Because this is kind of a favorite throwing knife of mine, all right, and it's pretty cheap, and they still make them, and they're still pretty cheap. I bought one just for this course. This is what that knife looks like, brand new in the box. I haven't even opened this. I think I paid $22 for this, and I'll put up information where to get it. But this one comes with the sheath, leather. I generally don't hang on to those, but you may want to. There she is. Got a little rubber boot there so it doesn't punch through the box, I guess. Alright, let's take this out. Well, this one's nasty. I don't know what they did to it. It'll clean up. This finger guard, hand guard, that's really just for show. I mean, they're trying to copy an old copy of a Bowie knife, obviously, where the finger guard was to protect your hand. So if I'm knife fighting with somebody, and usually from what I've read, unless somebody gets you in the head or the torso or the neck, your hands get cut up. As we're fighting, the blade will skip down here and cut the heck out of my hand. So bad I can't even hold on to my knife, and then I've lost. So they put these finger guards on here in case I'm in a knife fight. You know, my hands don't get diced up. You can take those off for your throwing knife. I'll get into that modifications. Now, so that's the finger guard. This would be the pommel or the butt. Handle, tang going through the back. It's rusted for some reason, but it's going to come off anyway. You can see the metal through there, so you know it's a full tang. When you can see the metal coming through the handle all the way around, it's a full tang. Alright? Spine of the knife, business end. Yeah, you know, it's kind of the same knife. I guess so. Alright. Well, there you have it. Knife Anatomy 101. Okay, there'll be a little more on this when we get into knife modifications. A little bit on that. And class dismissed.